The rain had been falling since noon, soft at first, then steadily building until it drummed like fingertips on the metal roof of the train station. The sky was a dense slate gray, and the tracks shimmered under puddles collecting between the steel. When Ethan Walker stepped onto the platform, he pulled his hood tighter around his head and adjusted the strap of his canvas bag over his shoulder. He was soaked from the short walk in the parking lot, but it didn't bother him. He had taken this trip hundreds of times before, just never this late, and never alone. Ethan was heading north to visit his sister, Claire, for the weekend. It was supposed to be a simple overnight train ride, no fuss, no transfers. But as he stepped aboard train 117 and looked around, he had a strange feeling in his chest. Something about the air inside the carriage felt off. It was too still, too quiet, even for a late-night train during a storm. He took a window seat in car 6, the last passenger car before the dining section, and wiped the fog from the glass with the sleeve of his jacket. Outside, rivulets of rain chased each other down the window. The lights above flickered for just a second, then steadied. There were only a few passengers scattered around, an older man with a tweed cap snoring softly 2 rows ahead, a young woman staring blankly at her phone screen across the aisle, and a man in a long black coat seated at the far end of the car, facing forward but motionless. As the train lurched forward, Ethan took out his book, a crime novel he'd been meaning to finish, and tried to read, but his eyes kept drifting to the window and then, inevitably, back to that man in the coat. Something about him seemed frozen. He hadn't moved once, not to scratch, not to shift in his seat, not to blink. At first Ethan thought maybe he was asleep, but even sleeping people breathe visibly or twitch now and then. This man didn't. The rhythmic clack-clack of the wheels on the rails began to lull him. The storm outside sounded oddly soothing, the kind of steady rain that made people fall asleep on buses or couches. The girl across the aisle had put in earbuds and leaned her head back. The old man snored louder now. The lights overhead dimmed to a soft glow as the train entered a tunnel. It was darker now, and Ethan felt himself drifting. He shut his book and rested his head against the window. Just a quick nap, he told himself. He closed his eyes. He woke with a jolt. The train had stopped. It was pitch dark outside. The rain had slowed, now just a mist against the glass. He sat up straight and looked around. The girl was gone. So was a man in the cap. The man in the coat, still there, exactly the same position. Unmoving. He stood up slowly, stretching his legs. Maybe they got off at one of the stations while he was asleep, but that didn't make sense. He would have heard the announcement. The doors opening, footsteps, something. He walked to the dining car, peeking into the next section, but it was empty. No workers, no passengers, just dimly lit tables and a stale smell of coffee and metal. "Hello," he called softly. No answer. He turned back toward car 6. As he passed the silent man again, he dared a closer look. The man's eyes were open now. Open, but they weren't looking at Ethan. They were wide and glassy, staring straight ahead at nothing, like a mannequin or a photograph. "Sir," Ethan asked cautiously. Still no response. He reached out and tapped the man's shoulder. The man slumped sideways with sickening, boneless weight, like a dummy with the strings cut. Ethan gasped and jumped back. The man slowly returned to an upright position, but unnaturally, like he was being pulled up by invisible hands. Then he went still again. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. He backed away, returning to the seat, trying to calm himself. Maybe it was a prank, or some kind of sleep paralysis. Maybe he was still dreaming. But when he pinched himself, the sharp sting felt very real. He took out his phone. No signal. Of course. He glanced at the time. 2:17 a.m. The train was still stopped. No announcements. No conductor. No other sounds except the gentle hiss of rain and the distant creak of metal shifting. He decided to walk toward the front of the train. Maybe something had happened. Maybe the conductor needed help. He moved through car 5, then car 4. All empty. The seats were immaculate, untouched. No bags, no jackets. Nothing to suggest anyone had ever been there. Then in car 3, he heard a faint humming. It was soft and low, a tuneless melody that sent a chill through him. It was coming from one of the seats. A little girl was sitting near the window, swinging her legs gently, humming to herself. Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked carefully. She stopped humming, but didn't turn around. "Are you lost?" he added. The girl turned her head slowly. Her eyes were huge, too big for her face, and impossibly dark. She smiled at him, not in a sweet way, but in a knowing, eerie way. Her face looked almost old. Not aged, but wise beyond her years. Unnaturally wise. "You shouldn't be walking around," she said softly. "They don't like that." "Who?" Ethan asked, stepping back. The girl tilted her head. "The ones who live between the cars." A loud bang echoed from behind him. He spun around. The door between car 3 and car 4 had slammed shut on its own. The lights above flickered. When he turned back, the girl was gone. Not a trace. He ran to the spot where she'd been. Nothing. No footprints. No warmth in the seat. It was ice cold to the touch. His breath came fast now. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. Suddenly, the train jerked forward with violent lurch, almost throwing him to the floor. Lights returned to full brightness, then dimmed again in a pattern like a heartbeat. He ran back to his car, car 6, but the moment he passed through car 4, he stopped. Car 6 was different. It looked the same in layout, but the walls were grimier, the seats torn. It smelled damp like mold and rot. His bag was gone. So was the man in the coat. In fact, now the entire car was filled with strange passengers, all sitting stiffly, facing forward completely still. They didn't turn when he entered. They didn't move at all. Ethan walked slowly past them, heart pounding. None of them blinked. Their eyes were wide open, glassy like dolls. Their faces were pale, some with dark streaks under their eyes as if they'd been crying. He reached his seat, his old seat, and sat down slowly, hands shaking. The window was fogged again. He wiped it clear and saw nothing but blackness outside. No trees, no lights, no stations, just endless black. Then, faintly in the distance, he saw a face, pressed up against the outside of the window, staring in. He leapt back with a cry, but the face vanished. He wasn't alone on this train, and something was watching him. Ethan's breath came in shallow gasps. His heart raced so violently it felt like it might jump right out his chest. He stared at the window, willing himself to look again, to prove to himself the face had just been a reflection, some illusion caused by exhaustion and storm light. Slowly, he leaned toward the glass, his hands trembling. Nothing, just blackness. Pure, velvet black, like the train was floating in a void. The low hum of the train returned, but it felt deeper now, like something breathing just beneath the floorboards. A rhythmic, distant sound, as though the whole train was alive and waiting. Ethan couldn't sit still. He stood again and turned back toward the aisle, intending to walk up front once more and demand answers. As he passed each passenger in the newly altered car 6, he noticed how unreal they looked. Pale, waxy, almost like mannequins dressed in modern clothing. Their clothes were wrinkled, mismatched. Some were outdated styles. One man had a pocket watch clutched in his stiff hand, unmoving. Another woman wore gloves that looked like they belonged to another century. And then a sound, a soft whisper. He froze and looked around. None of the passengers had moved. The whisper came again. Not a voice, not words, but more like wind curling through a crack in the wall. He took a slow step forward, trying to locate the source. It was behind him. He spun around. Nothing. The seats were the same. The still passengers. The silent car. And yet, something had changed. He saw it in the window again. Not a face this time, but a shadow moving outside, pacing alongside the train, even though they were still speeding forward. It moved too quickly, too fluidly. It had no form, just a suggestion of a person, or something pretending to be one. Ethan rushed out of the car, through car 5 again and into car 4. He stopped halfway through. All the lights were out. He reached for his phone again. Still no signal, but the flashlight worked. A thin beam of light spilled into the aisle, shaking as he held it. It cut through dust motes and silence. The windows in this car were all covered in condensation, and something had written on the glass in long, looping letters. You can't wake up if you never slept. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He backed away, accidentally bumping into one of the seats. The passengers seated there turned their head slowly toward him. The movement was so unnatural, so quiet, that Ethan nearly dropped his phone. The person didn't blink, didn't speak, just stared. And then more movement. Every head in the car turned at once, slowly, deliberately, to look at him. Eyes wide, unblinking, faces expressionless. Ethan ran. He barreled through the car, nearly tripping over his own feet, and shoved open the door to the next section. The dining car was pitch black. His flashlight barely helped. The tables were covered in dust. Chairs overturned. A cold draft passed through the aisle, as if a door had been left open. He kept going, passing into car 2. There was someone there. A woman, seated near the front, wearing a gray coat and a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. She was the first person he'd seen on this train who looked normal. "Hey!" Ethan called. "Hey, are you okay?" She turned around slowly and smiled at him. Her eyes were tired but alive. Not glassy. Not frozen. "You're not supposed to be this far up," she said gently. There's something wrong," Ethan stammered. "Something's happening on this train. People are disappearing. They're not moving. There's a girl in a shadow and—" She held up a hand, calming him. "I know. I've been through it too." Ethan's mouth fell open. "What?" She gestured for him to sit beside her. He did, cautiously. "My name's Lily," she said. "I boarded this train 3 years ago. At least, I think it was 3 years. Time gets strange here." "Where are we?" Ethan asked. "What is this?" "I wish I had a clear answer," Lily said. "But the truth is, this train doesn't travel on tracks anymore. Not the kind you know. It slips between places, between times, between dreams and memories. Some people board it while asleep, some after accidents. Some just vanish one night and end up here." Ethan tried to make sense of it. "Are we dead?" Lily shook her head. "Not necessarily. Not yet. But if you stay long enough, you forget the difference." He looked down the aisle, back the way he came. "How do I get off?" She looked at him carefully. "You have to remember the last thing that made you feel real. Something that grounds you to the world. A sound, a name, a feeling. That's your way back." He closed his eyes, trying to remember the last real thing. Claire, his sister, her laugh, the smell of her house on Thanksgiving, the warmth of her hug when she opened the door. "I need to get to my sister," he whispered. Lily nodded. "Hold on to that. Don't let them take it from you." "Who?" But before she could answer, the lights flickered violently. A screeching sound echoed through the car, like metal dragging on metal. Lily stood up, panic flashing in her eyes. "They found you. Run." He didn't ask questions. He ran, back through the dining car, where the tables now seemed to stretch endlessly, far too many for one train car. He ran through car 4, where the passengers were standing now, no longer sitting, arms limp at their sides, faces turned toward him as he passed. He burst into car 6. It was empty again. His bag was back in his seat. The rain outside had returned, soft, comforting. He sat down, breath ragged, heart pounding. He grabbed his bag, clutching it like a life vest, and then a low chime echoed through the speakers. "Next stop, Fair Hollow Station. Please gather your belongings." The voice was clear, normal, like any other train announcement. He looked around. The passengers were normal again, sleeping, reading, one man eating chips. The girl with the dark eyes was gone. The man in the coat was gone. Lily was nowhere to be seen. The rain tapped gently against the glass. Ethan didn't move. Not yet. The train began to slow, the brakes whining as they approached a well-lit station platform. He stood slowly, gripping his bag, and walked toward the door. The train stopped with a gentle sigh. The doors opened. Cool. Fresh air poured in. Real air, not the cold dampness from before. People stood and began leaving, stepping out onto the platform as though nothing unusual had happened at all. He stepped out too. The platform was wet with rain, but it was morning now. Pale gray light broke through the clouds. A few birds chirped. A woman on a bench sipped coffee. It felt real. It felt safe. But when Ethan looked back at the train, something chilled him again. The windows were dark. No one visible inside. Then the train slowly pulled away, vanishing into fog like a ghost slipping into the sea. He stood there for a long time. Eventually, he walked toward the street, toward the address his sister had sent him, toward a world he recognized. He would never tell her what really happened on that train ride. He would never take the 2 a.m. route again. But sometimes on quiet nights, when the rain felt his right against his window, he swore he could still hear the wheels of that strange train clacking far off in the distance, and a little girl humming just beyond the glass.